Game reviews on YouTube have deep roots in absurdist negativity. With enough time behind it, this would become a deluge of genuine negativity, with the genre attracting, let's just say a group of people who aren't known for their social awareness. But they sure loved licensed characters shitting themselves. Naturally, this spawned the angry reviewer trope, where a neckbeard with no acting experience would get heated enough for his headset mic to pick up, but not so much that he'd wake dad. The lack of commitment to doing your best Banshee impression brings with it a question of authenticity. Are you actually angry, or are you mildly inconvenienced and don't know how to write an engaging script? Yeah, join the club. Sometimes it makes me so angry, I could scream. Ah! See that? Effective scream. Dad's still asleep. Pretending to be angry and failing to sell it is cringe, right? Like, of course, but this trend also brought into question other aspects, such as the levels of negativity. There's something to be said for too much negativity being a drag, but I embrace that kind of approach because I understand it. What you call being an asshole, I call having standards, which is why I'm only sponsored by the best, Raid Shadow Legends. I feel like by this point everyone's heard of Raid Shadow Legends, but did you know, Raid's got over 600 champions? That's right, and all of them come from unique factions, each with their own history in the world of Teleria. It spans thousands of years, surviving the fall of the Lizardman Empire. They helped humans form civilizations and defeated orcs when they attacked the continent. But then some Lord of Darkness dude called Siroth convinced a bunch of elves to go evil and attack the kingdom, which launched a civil war that nearly ended the elves, but Aravia survived, rebuilt, and now it's stronger than ever. Fantastic. I'm pretty fond of the High Elves myself. I've been reading up on their backstory and it's quite interesting. My favourite champion is Jingle Hunter. I mean, look at that hood. That's a primo hood. This month, Raid's got a non-stop schedule of special events and activities, including Forge Pass Season 3 with some amazing rewards on offer. This includes a limited edition artifact set. Very nice. As if that wasn't enough, Raid's bringing out some new champions, along with some awesome looking champion skins for the incredible Madame Ceres. But wait, that was the small news. This is the big news. Later this month, Raid's giving everybody's favourite champion the upgrade he deserves. He had a little struggle in some of Raid's hilarious videos, but finally, Death Knight is becoming a legendary champion. It's something we've all been waiting for, at least I know I have. I'm sure you have too. And I can't wait to see how Ultimate Death Knight turns out. This is the best time to get started in Raid, and if you click my link in the description or scan my QR code here on screen, you'll get unique bonuses worth $30. We're talking a free epic champion Rector Draft, 200,000 silver, 1 energy refill, and 1 experience boost, as well as an ancient shard so you can summon awesome champions as soon as you get in game. All this treasure will be waiting for you, here. The point of my early spiel about excess negativity was to lead into the subject of the video, which is the subject of my videos. Huh. I hate this already. When I take on a topic, I do my best to give it a fair shake and aim to piss off as few people as possible, despite how it may seem with my colourful language use. I wouldn't want me being a dumbass to reflect negatively on something I find interesting enough to put in a video. However, almost everything on this channel is filled with unwavering cynicism, which, you know, I guess that could have a similar impact. Even if it's an earnest expression, encouraging people to try something I personally love, I feel compelled to knock it down a bit, you know, keep their expectations realistic. People are contrarian by nature, so if you scream that a game's a literal 10 out of 10, most are going to assume that you're a liar, because no piece of media is perfect, and we all know it. Still, I'm going to suppress those bad vibes for a couple minutes and briefly fillet some games that turn this perpetual cynic into, you know, someone tolerable. Diablo 2 is one of the comfiest action role-playing hack-and-slash games out there. You can run with a regular character and blast through it mindlessly, or you can switch up to hardcore and get a little sweaty. Character and build diversity is generous, and due to the procedural generation, you'll never have the same run twice. The sound and visuals create a unique atmosphere, and it's quite the brief experience, as once you hit Act 2, you can stop. It is a bit dated, and compared to newer titles of the genre, there's definitely some stuff missing, but you know, not everything has to be the pinnacle of modern game design. Sometimes the charm of playing a game is that it's awkward and old, which can add to the experience. Inversely, newer games miss a lot of the things that make Diablo 2 special, like a consistent theme and nostalgia and being good. Honestly, the worst thing about Diablo 2 is that you've got to pay Blizzard if you want to play online, which kind of makes my skin crawl. I don't know what it is about Dark Souls, but it's my comfort game. Whenever I've got a couple hours, I'm more than happy to waste it dicking around in Lordran. I don't even have to achieve anything or have a purpose. I'm perfectly content just existing in this vacant world. The open design and lack of strict linearity allow the player to shift goals on the fly, and that small amount of brain involvement make it incredibly engrossing. While I independently prefer the level design and RPG elements of Demon's Souls, the combat of Sekiro, and the overall tone of Bloodborne, nothing quite fulfills the full package quota like Dark Souls. There's little more rewarding than booking it through Sen's Fortress around the twisted halls of Anor Londo and laying the smackdown on the final bosses Ornstein and Smo. What's that? What, they're not the final... No, you're thinking of a different game. It's probably Dark Souls 2. Different game. I'm a sucker for pretty much anything Dragon Ball Z, despite the fact that I kinda hate it. If you give me a mediocre game that's got buff blokes screaming at each other and then slap stat modifiers on top, I'll praise it as the greatest thing ever. Naturally, if you give me an above par game with those same things, it'll be in this video. Legacy of Goku 2 for the Game Boy Advance is some of the most fun you can have on a handheld. It's just dumb fun from start to finish, except for that dinosaur egg quest, but... Look, I'm trying to be positive, come on. Let's not make this any harder than it has to be. The combat's got a nice bouncy flow to it, the side content is engaging and bizarre, and the game doesn't take itself too seriously, which is perfect for me. Most older Dragon Ball games are borderline unplayable, so the fact that this is functional and fun is practically a miracle. Most importantly, I can pretend to be my favourite characters and scream along with them in my, socially unaware bliss. I'm not big on fighting games, but Budokai Tenkaichi 3 is an arcadey Dragon Ball battle simulator, which might seem contradictory, but I can't describe it any better. The story mode's bare bones, but the gameplay is primo. You fly around and shoot blasts in a small arena, just like the show! It also gets quite complex for a 3D fighter, as the handful of modes feature many ways to pursue tougher combat. The hardest of which require that you understand at least a bit of the advanced tech outside of spamming beams, though spamming beams does work surprisingly well. The roster is massive and spans the entire series, as of 2007, so none of that super shit. Honestly, probably for the best. Characters can also be customized to a degree in either raw stats or special effects, and this presents a more tactical preparation to generally samey combat. Every time I boot this bastard up, I lose a couple hours of life, sometimes days. It is genuinely one of the best Dragon Ball games, easy. I just made a video on Digimon World, so I'm not going to waste any time talking about it, but I replay it at least once a year and love it a little bit more each time. If you haven't played it, you should, or at the very least watch my video. You may regret it. Let's keep the anime train rolling, I guess. I love Yu-Gi-Oh! Not the bike shit or where they're pulling cards out of some stranger's ass in another dimension, but like the OG one with Yugi and his buds. There's one game that stands out to me as going above and beyond the standard card game experience, and that is Dungeon Dice Monsters. But the one that I actually like is Duelist of the Roses. The story is a stand-in for the War of the Roses, but nobody cares, because they've got their Aqua Dragon and they're going to win every battle with it. And you know, while that is great fun, playing legitimately is cool too. You place a card on the field and take turns moving it over a grid and intercepting other cards so you can smack the enemy down. It can be a bit slow, and there's nothing particularly strategy heavy outside of field control, but I do dig how each story battle basically requires a deck rework because of the point limit system. Unless you got that Aqua Dragon, one of those fuckers will clear the game on its own. Now, kiddies, gather around the warm, brain-damaging glow of your monitor and let this old man tell you about Alex Kidd in Miracle World. It's a platformer for one of the fucking Segas, I don't know. It came out so close to Super Mario Bros. On the NES, it could smell what it had for breakfast. Unlike every other platformer, Alex Kidd broke out and did its own janky thing, which created a bizarre end result. Instead of being strictly horizontally aligned and falling back on a killer control scheme with levels built around that, it just kinda threw shit at the wall, but it worked surprisingly well. You collect money and can buy items from stores. There's mystery blocks that give you rings, but then if you get another mystery box, there's a ghoul inside, but then a third one gives you a free life. Like, it sends mixed signals, but that's why it's great. It got remade recently, and it's okay. Like, the original has this really intentional feel, and I feel like the remake missed that, but you know, they could have done a lot worse. Overall, good job, guys. While I dig the early run of Castlevanias, there's nothing like a good Igavania to really crunch your numbers. If it released between like 97 and 2009, I loved it. Symphony, the Game Boy Advance ones, the Nintendo DS ones, they're all great for their own reasons. The pointless wandering around copy-pasted halls, the heavily exploitable RPG elements, the grinding for souls and items. I love it all. Metroidvanias have always copped a bit of flack, mostly for the name, but also for the forced backtracking, which is seen as a progress killer and bad design, but I think it breeds a heightened sense of environmental awareness. It forces you to focus on the abnormalities and roadblocks of the world to connect them to your newly acquired tools, and highly rewards those who go out of their way to locate secrets. If I could pick one specifically, it'd probably be Symphony of the Night, but if you handed me any of the others, I wouldn't even be mad. Even Bloodstained was pretty solid, but I feel like it lost something with the transition to 3D, even though it's functionally similar. The sprites and animations have a charm that 3D models simply can't capture. Sorry, bro. I've also got a video on Ogre Battle, but it's like 5 years old at this point, so it probably sucks. I'd say watch it, but I don't want to watch it to confirm if it's watchable. You know, life's funny sometimes. I do not like real-time strategy, but Ogre Battle isn't overly focused on micromanagement or Korean domination. It's a simple single-player game, and it's packed with RPG elements. The story is far from complex, but it's focused. All the droplets you dished are enough to keep you hydrated through the many hours of waiting, and eventually connect together, creating a relatively deep puddle of worldly intrigue. It's slow, but it's rewarding. If you've never played it, I can't help you at this point. Like, what went wrong in your life? How did you get this way? While we're on the subject of Ogre Battle, you might be surprised to see Knight of Lotus here and not Let Us Cling Together, and I do love the original, it's just not as comfy as the Game Boy Advance one. The OG is very world-oriented, whereas Lotus focuses more on the characters. I get my worldly intrigue from Ogre Battle, so when I play Tic Tac Ogre, I'm looking at more character interactions, and faster battles. Knight of Lotus is nowhere near as deep, it's basically loading a ninja party with katana and stomping through at breakneck speed. It's also way shorter than its older brother, which makes it easy to come back to. There's little to tie it to the stem of the Ogre Battle series, March of the Black Queen, so outside of the small nods, it feels like a separate story, where I'm just a blue-haired dude who has an army, and if there's something I enjoy, you know, it's a modest game. Here's a fun thought, the Dragon's Trap counts as a pre-Symphony Metroidvania, right? Right? Someone validate me. You kill enemies for money, purchase and find equipment in dungeons, kill bosses for extra monster forms, find secrets in walls. It's got everything but experience points and mid-2000s edge. Whatever, it doesn't matter. Whatever you want to call it. It's still great. It's old, it's obtuse, it's reasonably difficult, it's everything you love about a platformer from the late 80s. A Metroidvania from the late 80s. It got a remake recently, which is functionally fine, but the visual style's a bit iffy. You can hot swap between them, so nothing's lost. I guess it's more accessible now, so everybody wins, you know? Alright, I got big videos planned for Breath of Fires 3 and 4, so I won't spend much time talking about them, but you have to try them for yourself if you haven't already. Breath of Fire 3 is a solid attempt at creating one of the greatest JRPGs of all time. It's got some of the best sprite work and music in the history of games, and it poses some deep philosophical questions which are far out of my league. The fourth title had some growing pains and relied a little too heavily on 3D models, but the narrative is scarily human. It's such a dark game despite the ostensibly bright poppy visuals. Most encounters are won by selecting auto battle, they downgraded a few systems and went too hard on gimmicks, but overall, still an amazing game with about, 3/4 of a great story to tell. What can I even say about Final Fantasy IV at this point? It's the progenitor of the mash A to win trend in JRPGs, and one of the least remarkable Final Fantasy titles, but that's why I dig it. It stays in its lane, it's a simple story with simple characters and simple problems. The combat is mind-numbing, you can see every twist coming a mile away, but the places you see and the characters you interact with build a sequence of events that are thoroughly enjoyable. I replay it every couple years and I've gone through all the versions, which all have their own strengths and weaknesses, but the one that I keep coming back to is the original. The Super Nintendo version with its dwarf sprites, ugly backgrounds, and barely functional combat is my version. This is probably the least critical you'll ever see me be, because it's objectively the worst of all the releases, but to me, it's what makes it special. It's not an attempt to refine an earlier work, it just is, and that's kinda beautiful. If it isn't abundantly clear by this point, I like edgy games, and I love RPGs. Yeah, shock horror, right? This is obviously not a definitive list, it's missing Alundra, Dark Cloud, I don't think Suikoden was in it, but to me, this was like, how many times can I say, I plan to do a real video on this before it becomes redundant? This is just a quick shit video to rattle a couple games off the top of my head that I unapologetically love, despite them. Thanks for watching, I'll see you next time for real videos.